Good evening and welcome. I'm Lara Goldmann and this is Elizabeth Shores. And we are excited to have Dr. Kirsten Pai Buick and Deborah Roberts joining us tonight for an evening at John Sommers. Before I introduce Dr. Kirsten Pai Buick, who will be introducing Deborah Roberts, we would like to thank the Art Department of the University of New Mexico, as well as the Department of Art and Ecology and our private donors for making this ongoing speaker series possible. Thank you so much. Throughout the talk, we encourage you to submit written questions, and after the talk, we will invite you to ask your questions personally. You can turn on your camera if you wish to, or you just ask through audio. It is an honor to now introduce Dr. Kirsten Pai Buick, who is one of the most brilliant and generous thinkers and educators I have ever met, and who not only impacted my seeing and being more than anyone else, but has changed the way we experience and look at the world for many and probably most of the students who had the privilege to be in her classes and seminars. Dr. Kirsten Pai Buick is a professor of art history at the University of New Mexico. Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, she went to the University of Chicago, where she double majored in art history and Italian literature. She later switched her concentration to British colonial and US art. She has published extensively on African American art and has been the recipient of numerous awards and fellowships, including the Smithsonian American Art Museum's pre-doctoral fellowship, the Charles Gaius Bolin Fellowship at Williams College, and she is the recipient of the Driscoll Prize in 2015. She has taught at the University of New Mexico since 2001. Her book, Child of the Fire, Marriott Monia Lewis and the Problem of Art History's Black and Indian Subject, is published by Duke University Press. Her second book, In Authenticity, Kara Walker and the Eidetics of Racism, is in progress. Dr. Kirsten Pai Buick, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and it is my pleasure to introduce Deborah Roberts this evening. When I first saw her work at the Spelman College Museum of Art, I stopped in my tracks, turned to my friend and curator of the exhibition, Andrea Barnwell Brownlee, and I asked if she was creating a catalog, and if so, could I please write about the work? The exhibition, The Evolution of Mimi, deeply touched and challenged all who contributed and all who were privileged to experience the show. Roberts is a mixed media artist whose work challenges the notion of ideal beauty. She is an artist who challenges the constant onslaught against Black people through the medium of collage. She examines with a skilled and critical eye notions around the body, race, and identity, often through the lens of representations of Black children. Currently, she has her first solo museum presentation in Texas titled I'm, and is part of the Contemporary Austin's participation in the Feminist Art Coalition, a nationwide initiative of art institutions to generate awareness of feminist thought, experience, and action through exhibitions and events. Her work has been exhibited internationally across the USA and across Europe. Roberts' work is in the collection of the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Brooklyn Museum, the Studio Museum in Harlem, the LA County Museum of Art, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, and the Blanton Museum of Art, to name just a few. She has also been the recipient of distinguished artist residencies and recognitions, and rightly so. She was selected to participate in the Robert Rauschenberg residency and was a finalist for the Outwin Bouchever portrait competition, as well as the recipient of the Anonymous Was a Woman grant and the Pollock Krasner Foundation grant. Roberts received her MFA from Syracuse University. She lives and works in Austin, Texas, and is represented by the Stephen Friedman Gallery in London and the Suzanne Vielmetter Los Angeles projects in California. Please help me to welcome her this evening.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I hope that you can see me and we can get started. What I plan to do tonight is to show you some of my influences, some of my work, some of my thoughts about race and beauty as it pertains to young Black women and young Black men, and through a series of slides and statements. So we're going to save it at the end for questions and answers. So I hope that you guys give me some great questions. And I have to tell you guys, I am a Texan, so I tend to go on and on. So I'm just going to watch it and make sure I don't get into a long dialogue. So I'm going to hit the share button right now and share this work. And we're gonna get started. So let me go to full screen here. And okay, so we're gonna start off with Romir Bearden and how he has influenced my work. And while at the early points when I was starting my collages back in 2011, 12, um, Romir Bearden was like the foremost person I was looking at. And then I started to look at Kirk Schwitter and how he used text. And then I went to Hannah Hawk and just loved the way she talked about the body, and she talked about how people were appropriating images from Africa, and how women were seen. And so I'm just going to start off with Romir Bearden because I just totally love him. The beauty in his faces, the cuts. I try not to look at too much of beard because I just, I don't have a background. My background is white, but the way he places images and it's just amazing. I totally love it. Um, and this is another one of his pieces. And while I also do the body, the full body, mine isn't as fractured as his, but I've noticed in my practice that my work is starting to fracture. And in my show in Austin, I have two pieces, and where you can see that the work is starting to fracture, to break apart, that no longer is the full body has to be present in order for you to understand what's happening. And I guess I owe that to Ramir. And this is another piece. The idea of the color, the structure, the patterns, the texture, all of those things have influenced my work in a way that I just love using stripes. I love using push and pull, pushing figures forward, pushing figures backwards. And he was just a master of collage. This is a piece by Hannah Hawk. When I talked earlier about how she would take African sculptures and add it to her work, and just cover the whole face, and saying how some of these artists, like Picasso, was appropriating images from Blackness. And this is one of her pieces. This is beautiful. The juxtaposition against the big hand and the small image of the face was just perfect. And this is a work by Wengechi Mutu, whose work has very much influenced my work early on. I love her use of talking about female and black and our bodies, and how our bodies have been ripped apart, and her work is just amazing. The scale, the color, I think she uses a lot more magazine cutouts, and I don't use that in my practice, but this work is just amazing. It's beautiful. and this piece in particular where she talks about beauty, and I do that in my work. One of the things that I do that's different from her, I take a four-pronged approach to creating my collages. I talk about art history, American history, Black culture, and pop culture, and I add all those things together and create the face, the body, what I want to talk about. And in this work, when Gaethje was talking about beauty, and this is and its most, you know, simplest but complicated ways. And I just think this is, I'm just a fan of her work. It's just beautiful. And this is mine. And this piece I did back in 2017, in which a little girl in Texas who was at a swim party, and the police came and they wrestled her to the ground. She had no weapon. She was just an innocent teenager who probably had a loud mouth, and um, they arrested her. And so the symbolic of the bomb pops is law enforcement as they see these young kids as being adult people when they're really just young, adolescent kids. And I thought that I would put three faces on here and put red hair, that if she was seen as somewhat different, would police see her differently. And this work is a piece that is owned by the Bland Museum here in Austin. And this is another one I did after Philando Castile was killed, murdered. And it's the duality that we see as Black people entering the world. And so she's holding this white face that if she had this cover on her face, where she, had been stopped or something like that. And then on the top of her head, she has matches that have been burnt. And then in one hand here, she has a light skin and dark skin, because law enforcement and the criminal justice system seems to sometimes make examples out of dark skinned people more. I mean, all people of color, but dark skin in particular, sometimes get harsher sentences. So this was a work that I worked on. This is another piece from 2017, in which I started early on, not really understanding that my work was fracturing, but you can see that how the arms are coming away from the body, and how she has, this fire extinguisher, and then the little Chuck tennis shoes on, and then her ponytail is made as a fist, and this is the idea of that we can do things, very calmly and protest, but by any means necessary, that if it comes to it, we have to really, get out there and protest. And this work is called Grills Not on Me. And this was a series of, I did this in 2018. This is a series of 5 works um, dealing with how rap music talks about Black women and how the world sees us based on those lyrics. And so while we want, rappers to be successful, and but we also don't want them to be successful on me. And so in this work, did 2 grills on the girl, and her lips are turned. And it's a beautiful image of a little girl that I have exhausted in my work, but I also put a little princess cap on her, and saying that if you believe that your wife and your daughters are princesses and queens, then you shouldn't talk about Black women as being. So I don't know what the audience is, but bitches and hoes. So I said it. There you go. And so that what this work is about. I love it. It's a beautiful series. Also, this is another work where I've decided to um, leave out some of the material and just let the white paper, the white space, complete the image. This work was also done in 2018. This was my first work on panel. And I did also use the kind of grill sense in the mouths of the young girls, and they're just cute little schoolgirls with white shirts on, and they're throwing up peace signs, because pop culture is it's just at the forefront of young girls and young people. Oh yeah. And this is a series of works I did based on Rosa Parks. And the whole series is called Rosa. And this is a piece in which this little girl wanted to go to school with powder on her face because she wanted to be white and she was black. And I thought that was the most, very sad story. And so many things have been, so many beautiful women out there, and for little girls to still feel that their skin tone is inappropriate or not beautiful, to me is very sad. And we haven't done a good job of telling them how beautiful they really are. And so I just put Rosa's Parks booking number there. Those are Rosa's hands. Then I put the folded hands of a little girl just pouting that she wants to look like this. And then the skirt is also from Aunt Your Mama, and this idea that this is what history has done for us in our image. And this was a piece I done in 2019. And this was the first boys that I decided to do in my work. And so many people had asked me during the 2 years before, why don't you do boys? There are a lot of problems that young males are having in our community. This idea from jailhouse to schoolhouse, excuse me, from schoolhouse to jailhouse, and that they were having the same type of problems, and it's just different from girls, but they were deemed as hard to teach and put into special ed classes. And so I did these two little beautiful little boys, and they looked really younger um than the works that I do now, but they were so innocent. And it was a lot of work to do on them. I could pick apart it, but I'm not. I'm going to move on because I do know it's great looking back at work and see the growth. The work that I do with the males now is more developed, it's more sophisticated. I can really push that language of seeing them as innocent, allowing them to just be children. This is a work I did. It's called Red, White, and You, and it has two young girls who are back to back, and it was like asking America, what are you more afraid of? Someone who is Muslim or someone who is dark black? And they each have a glove on because they each have to defend their own identity of who they are. And I did want them to seem as just young girls existing in the world and having to, constantly fight for their own identity, their place in a country that don't want to share. And so this piece, yeah, this is on canvas. Is quite large. It is 72 by 60. And yeah, so Stephen Freeman Gallery. This is the only work I think I have. Well, maybe this is maybe only two works I have where I have both a male and a female in the work. Oh, actually, I have maybe three works like that. This is the first one. This is a work on panel, and this says our histories abound, and so as you can see, this is a young work. I have the boy with James Baldwin's eye in it, and his hands in his pocket, and then the girl is right next to him with the hands clasped, saying that we're in this fight together. We need to stick together, and still developing how the males look in the work. This time I was really into stripes. As I showed that early. Um, Bearden piece, disc work kind of, I just that whole summer I was just totally into stripes. I don't know. Now I'm into florals. It's crazy. I don't know what's my problem. So this work is a piece that I think I have right now. I have 10 in the series. This is Nisam Dorma. this work is of George Stinney Jr., who was a 14-year-old kid who was executed in 1944 in South Carolina. He was accused of killing two young girls who were riding their bikes by his house. And he was arrested, tried, and convicted and executed all in 80 days. And 70 years later, he was exonerated. They realized there was no way possible he could have had, was able to carry these girls across a field without damaging his feet. He had no shoes. There was no way for him to take their bikes without anyone seeing it the same way. Um, and and it's just awful. So this work, I put him in a prison uniform, and this is his mugshot uh, picture. And I wanted to show his little small hands because he was a 14-year-old in prison with grown men. And it's called I Solemnly Do Swear. So even if you raise your hand and put it on the Bible, even if you at that point, and still today, if you say that you didn't do something, sometimes you're not believed. And this work was piece that I also did in 2019, where I wanted to show some distance and also a forefront. Um, this piece, when little kids are stopped by the police, especially African American kids, they tend to sit them on their butts and show your hands, either cross your hands in front of you. If you're an adult male, you have to put your hands behind you. And I wanted to show their faces as they were asked to do this, and how they would look and how they feel, because they were probably out playing ball and one kid has no shoes on. I did the juxtaposition of the faces and the hands up, one kid looking directly at you. I put Sidney Poitier's face in here because I just wanted it. The defiant one was the movie poster I used. I put Glenn Thurman's face in Raisin in the Sun because he just was so beautiful as a child. And I just wanted to show these kids in their own element, and that there's nothing to be afraid of. And it's also based off of that story in Chicago where a young kid was accused of having a gun. They handcuffed him, put him up against a police car. He was so afraid he wet his pants, and he just was never going to be the same, to be accused of a crime that you didn't do. And it was awful, and he started crying, and it's just, they changed who he was, how he saw life at that day, and he was only 10 years old. And so the next one is this piece. This is called Handshakes, head knobs and handshakes. And this was done late 2019 also. And you can see how I started to fracture the face a little bit, fracture the body. I wanted to show that there was this life that you had to lead as a kid, whether or not, your whole life, you were always going to be seen as this one thing, this Black person, and not the duality of just being a father, a son, a brother, active member of society, that if people saw you, they were going to criminalize you right away. And it just, I really love this work. And this is also a work on panel. And this is another large work that is also 72 by 61. And this is when I started exploring how I wanted to start to move the work off the paper and not being so much a part of the whole white space. And so I have this kid walking, and he's holding uh, Black children's faces, and he's holding them closer to him as if he's taking care of them. And he's moving quite quickly through this maze of the world. And yeah, this is a really important piece. Um, Something that I'm going to revisit because I want to. Sometime in my work, I do multiple images in the work. And I keep, every time I see this work, I think about, I want to do three guys walking off the page. And I think it'll be amazing. I think I need to do that soon. And also, this is one of the early collages I did. Um, and hopefully, let me go back. You can see how the work has started to mature a little bit from the previous one. And this is a piece I did. And I remember maybe 2018 and early on. And like I said, the work is of these little boys. The story is getting deeper. It's getting more complex, and putting more things into work. This is a piece I did last year. It's a part of a series, and it's called That's Not Ladylike. And a friend of mine was talking about her daughter, and she did something, and her father said, "Hey, that's not ladylike." And she remember, like, having a discussion with her husband about what was ladylike and what was not. And so I thought that was really um, important for young girls. Recently, I just read an article how young girls are seen as less innocent than their counterparts, and how just the simple gestures and walking and clothing tend to sexualize them at age 8, 9, and 10, and they're just actually just being little girls. Exploring who you are. I mean, at that age, you can start, hopefully your parents starting to let you choose your clothes. And this is the only work that I've done, and all my work where I put red toenail polish on. Because I always felt like, when I was a kid, we could never do that. It was always either white or pink. And my mom never let us do things like that. But, this idea of sexualizing little girls. And so I just kind of, put her hands out front, and she's making kind of a gesture of, look at me, and doesn't mean that she's not innocent. Yeah, and then this one also I did in 2020. This is a work on paper. And again, I used some elements and some ideas of Bearden. But I also wanted to talk about this idea of kids being pulled in multiple ways and not being allowed to develop who they are. And so I wanted his hands crossed. Again, I used a Poitier's face. I also used James Baldwin's mouth in this work. And it's also, a mixed media. And I always tell people, if I don't use 85% collage, and then the rest is a mixed media, then I feel like I haven't done my job, because I'm a collage artist. I want to add collages. Is collage for me gives pathways to talk about multiple things, and I try to do that in my practice all the time. And oh, okay, this is a great one. This is another work that I've done. I did it last year during quarantine, and it was right before shut down, shelter in place. And I wanted to talk about that idea of who we were before we were brought over and had no history. Now we are Americans, and but we did have a history. We just don't know it. So I love the idea of the African face, and then the cutout of the image, and then the hand behind her head saying, not now. And just the beautiful innocent face with the little afro puffs, and the pictures of the hands is of a mother who lost her child. And so I resource a lot of imagery and try to put it together in my collages, to say that it is a loss in this work also. And even though this woman is grieving, the idea of a loss of identity and history is very present. Also in this work, you can also see where I left the paper white and allowed the eye to finish the work. And this is also another work that I done last year during COVID. I mean, shelter in place. And and I just, this is just one of my collages that I've really tried to do multiple faces. And this work, I started adding buttons and different types of patterns, art history patterns, and um, just great. And I found this face of this young girl who I love, and I try to. One of the things I always tell my assistants is that please don't let me exhaust the face. Sometimes I use it too much. And this is another work I did last year when I had private time in the studio because we were sheltering in place. And I love the idea of the cherries in their mouth, which just shows the lack of, the innocence that is still there. And also the faces of both girls, even though the side view is looking away, that's the face that's looking directly at you. And this idea of kind of comfort with the male hand, the big hands, and then also the lack of of paper, and it's just great. The work, is eventually, hopefully you'll be able to recognize these works, but I see the fracturing happening in the work, and I'm okay with that. This is the work that I did that made it on the cover of Harper's Bazaar in October. Um, and I'm gonna tell you, this is the work I did in I guess early March of last year, when the whole idea of what was happening with us with COVID-19, and I was unsure. And then this is the work that I done in September, and you can see that their works got larger, they got more sophisticated. I think, I'm hoping. And this is called The Unseen. And these girls, because I do children, I cannot uh, make like gunshots and stuff like that. But she has a tissy pop, and the pop is the violence, and it's sometimes we don't talk about violence against Black women and how so many Black women have gone missing. And so I wanted to have them crouch down. I wanted them to take up this white space in the canvas, and to bloom all over, to be seen, and not let the white space, while it's important, dictate what is happening in this work. Okay, so anyway, so I didn't know if we're gonna have art students in here, and one of the questions that everybody always asks me is, how do I make it in the art world? And I was like, I don't know. It took me a lot of years and in my 50s to finally make it, But I don't consider myself made it. I think that what I feel is that I've always been a successful artist. It's just I probably didn't have the monetary um, proof of that, but I've always been honest in my practice. And so these are some of the ways to kind of, figure out what you wanted to do and how you can get people to look at your work. I tell them that social media is a tool now that we have to use as artists to get your work across. You cannot use your Instagram page with all your family members and everything. If you want to be an artist and you want to have people see only your art, your Instagram page should be just your art, and have another page for your puppy and your cat and everything else. And hashtagging is very important. I use 5 algorithms for my hashtag to get on curator sites. So I use art, uh, drawing, painting, mixed media, and contemporary art. Those things help you get on to different types of directors, curator sites, because you're using some of the hashtags they're using, and you come up as suggestions. So that way people can see your work. Trying to have access to museum curators and gallery directors. Well, through COVID now, it's really hard, but I always do a newsletter and I send it out, whether have ideas and thoughts about what I want to do. And because everybody's checking emails, this is a chance to just send it out to everyone, and hopefully something stick. Talk well about your work and what you want. Don't send it out to a curator a moment and saying, I want to show. That's not going to work. But just constantly just keep people updated on what you do. Art fairs, forget about that right now. Group shows are always important. Studio visits, because we're in COVID right now, it's really important to try to get Zoom meetings with artists and curators. Write someone and just simply ask, I only want 15 minutes of your time. Send them if they agree to it, send them, don't send them 40 slides of your work, send them the best 12. Um, you want to show, you want advice, take all of that off the table. Just say, hey, I'm doing some work. Um, I want some different eyes on it. This is what I'm thinking. I've been locked away in COVID. I may be in a rabbit hole. But take all the things that they can't do for you, but just see the work and tell you what they're seeing. Take those things away, and you'll be surprised how many people say, "Okay, I can do it." I also said studio updates. That's like newsletters. Create a blog, talk about your work, put it out there. Um, Also, it's important to know where your art fits. If you're doing butterflies, you can't put your work in a gallery that does machine guns. It just doesn't work. So find artists who you are in dialogue with, look at their CV, find out where they showed early on in their career, and then try to approach those type of galleries if you have similar work. Don't go to places that only show cows and pigs. And if you're doing anime, it doesn't work. So know where your work works best. Also, take chances. I've done a lot of things like that, and also be willing to fail. And what I didn't show in my presentation are all my bad art. And I started to show it tonight, but I decided not to because I didn't want to look at it. And not everything that I've done is good. Not everything that I'm doing now is good. It's all a process of learning and taking chances, and that's what I do. So I don't know how long I talked, but that's my spiel, and I'm open to questions and comments and accusations or whatever else you want to throw at me at this time. So, Kirsten, someone come back and help. Okay, 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 okay.
Thank you so much for sharing insights about your beautiful work with us today, Deborah. We've been collecting questions in the chat, in the Q&A section. And at this time, we'd like to invite audience members to continue sending in different questions that they may have. If you feel comfortable with it, you can also let us know that you'd like to turn on your camera or turn on the audio if you'd like to engage that way as well. But so while the audience members are taking some time to gather their thoughts, I wanted to ask Deborah, Kirsten, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask one another at this time?
Thank you for that, Deborah. That was fun. And I always appreciate your honesty, openness, your generosity. One of the things that seemed to be consistent in the way you talked about your works is the idea of white space.
Right.
And I was wondering if you'd like to say more about it. It's interesting that you see it as an antagonist
Yes.
in the work. I think that's fascinating, especially coming out of UNM where the printmaking program is so strong. And, we talk about positive and negative space, but, the way you talk about white space is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we are seen under the lens of whiteness our whole entire lives. And I think that this time that we're in, when people are so very important, simply because we're all carrying this, this virus that we can give to one another, and people are so important, and the idea of inclusion seeing more people of color in spaces. And I think what happened in my practice over this time is that my images decided that they needed to be larger. They needed to be more heroic, and they needed to be seen. Maybe the white space needed to shrink, and instead of we're being to be your full self, because so many times we have to reduce ourselves in order to fit into a certain, conversation, or a certain in a room full of people, and you're the only African American, you're the only Black person, or you're somewhere where you have to reduce yourself, and people can't see the fullness that you are. And I think that for me, and especially in the show I'm, is that would happen. I don't know. I didn't do it on purpose. I've always been an artist who allows the work to move itself, and I just go with it, because I told someone over the weekend I did the first tour of the I'm show, and I said when I got back and I did the first kid, and he was so big, and I was like, what happened? I'm excited. I was like, I'm back in the studio, and then the next one was huge. And then the third one, because I kind of work like 4 or 5, and I draw them out, and then I go to the next one now. And the third and the fourth one, I said, okay, I'm gonna take my time. And then I made it really small like the rest of it. And for some reason, it looked out of place. And so I said, okay, this is what's happening with the work. The work needs to take up the space. And I allowed that. And I think that's true right now in this time. Then who we are need to take up the white space. Mhm. Yeah. See, I told you, throw some questions out, because I can't talk in blank space. I get chatty.
No.
So please fill it up, or y'all gotta start hearing jokes pretty soon.
Well, one of the questions from one of our students was, do you resize the hands for the large collage pieces? And if so, how? And
Yeah,
Lara,
I do. Yeah, I do. I have a big printer in my studio. We call it Biggie Smalls, and I can take different, like, just recently I haven't been in my studio practice of all of December, and just in preparation of all the stuff I had to do this month. And I've been looking at hands, just different hands. And what I do, because I have a large printer, um, I just I take my computer, and then I lodge it up on the image size, and then I print it out. And sometimes it comes that huge, and then sometimes I have to reduce it. And sometimes big hands don't work too in my practice. So it depends on if it's pixelated. And I always tell people, so when you see my work, if something is pixelated, that's part of it, because I don't think you see the full picture all the time. So sometimes I pixelate stuff, sometimes I do grade stuff. And so, yeah, I work with hands, and I draw, and then I just put them in. I paint them in also. Hmm.
We have another question by Chloe Courtney. She, let's see if we can invite her. Could you invite her, Liz? So she can ask you in person. I think that's nicer.
Hi, Deborah. I don't know if anyone can see me, but thank you so much for the talk. I've so enjoyed it.
Oh, we missed her. We lost her.
Let's see, I think I'm here.
Oh,
Hello.
okay, there you go. How you
I wasn't
doing?
expecting to be on camera, but it's so good to see you. I followed your work for a long time, so this was such
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. And I wanted to ask, in relation to your source material, I so enjoyed hearing sort of all the references to the, figures that you're including in the images, and how you think about how these characters that you're creating are sort of carrying those fragments of past people or of historic figures, and also how that notion of fragmentation sort of relates to this idea of innocence that you are sort of restituting to the figures that you're offering us, that there's this innocence that is, I so enjoyed hearing you talk about that, but I'm interested to know how that relates to the idea of fragmentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So why I do a fractured face and a fractured body is because I wanted to put multiple faces in there, because I really believe that there's this monolithic idea of what Blackness is. It's either one thing, it's nothing else. It's not the multiplicity that you see in people who live life differently, and every experience is a Black experience. It's not the same experience. So fracturing the faces is very important, because I've always said it, and I always, every time I say this, I think it's Pollyanna. But I just want people, if you can focus in on one image, one face, and see that person's humanity, then you can see your own humanity in that person. I've always felt like police violence against Black bodies have always been this notion that they don't see themselves and the people they're policing. And if they don't see you as human, it's easier to take your life. It's easier to be more violent with you, and instead of saying, hey, that's maybe like my brother, he had a bad day last week, and maybe that's why he won't calm down, or that's why he had a fight with his girl, or something like that. Talk to people as if they're human. And we saw that during the, and not to bring politics in, but we saw during the insurrection is that they do know how to calm things down. They do know how to not use violence. They do know how not to take people's lives. So we just need more of that, more, like some guy yelling like the old Uncle Tom, Uncle Bill or whoever. And so those things. So that's why I fracture the word. That's why I sometimes put big hands, like in the Harper's Bazaar image, where you have that big hand coming up. And it's because these are two little girls, and then you have this big hand that sometimes I think people think they're bigger than they are, and they're not. So it's important to kind of to work on the fracturing and big hands, little hands, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
In the day. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you for your question.
And I see we have a message from Dr. Kim Pinder, and let's see if we can make her live to ask her question. Can you hear it? Kim, are you able to?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Kim.
Okay. I hope.
Oh, everyone, I'm sorry. I think that I accidentally kicked her out, and then she's coming back in. So I didn't mean to kick you out, Kim.
Hi. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I wish I could read my question.
I can read it. Kim says, thanks for sharing your engaging and beautiful work. Collagists have a variety of ways to collect and store the materials they use. Could you tell us how you move between digital imagery and actual materials? And do you start with a few fragments and improvise, or sketch out how the pieces will come together beforehand?
Right. Well, I'm no good at photoshopping and all that. All my source material I look up, and I find faces I like, and then I print them out, and they can come out whatever way they want. They can come out clean and tight, and they can come out blurry and things like that. So once I print out a full face, I start to cut. But always the base face has to be some little beautiful little kid that I think is so innocent, and I think that people should see them like this. And then I destroy that face. and I put other faces, big eyes and all this stuff, because I think that's the image that is being projected out into the world. And the way I create my collages, I don't have an idea. Once I get the face down, then I know what I want to say. I thought about what I would do for my solo show at Velmeter, and I just thought of the color red and how red could be a part of all the collages I do coming forward. So that's in right now in the forefront of my um, in my imagination. I don't use magazine cutouts because I think that they don't last. I think you're gonna have a problem with with making sure all those things be able to stay on top of the pictures once in 50 years. I use an Epson printer that says that it's supposed to stay for 200 years. I'm going to be dead. I'm not going to be able to sue them until if it doesn't happen. But they say that it's going to last for 200 years. So, and also I used a really good Golden's acid-free mixture to apply my collages. So everything is acid, ready. It's not going to damage up later. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, she said something about the hands of the mother who lost a child, or Baldwin's eye. Let's see, what was that? Important for the yeah. She said, is it important for the viewer to know those things? Not necessarily to know that that's Baldwin's eye or that this is the hand of a mother who lost a child. That's not important, but it's part of the work, and especially if you're doing this talk. I think that James Baldwin is so very relevant today. So I don't need to talk about Baldwin's eye in her work. When people look at it, they're going to see Baldwin's eye. But in 2017, 18, people started looking for people. That Obama's hand, that Michelle's arm, and it got out of control. So that's why normally I don't talk about it as much, but those are part of pop culture or art history or American history. And those are the mixture that makes my collages. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's great. I mean, I actually think it makes the work much more interesting not to know exactly what those parts create the whole. So I appreciate that.
Can I ask a question that I see? This is a guy from Mexico, and he asked a question is that I have studio rules, which I didn't talk about early on in my career. I would ask people to come over and look at the work. The work is being developed, and they would come and just come in and just rip me up, and or didn't understand what I was talking about as an artist, and I felt like this was killing me. So one of the things I decided to do was create some studio rules, and one of the most important ones was not everybody was going to understand what you do, and that's okay. And then I wrote that I must write about the work and do things like that. And that has helped me very much in my studio practice. It's just, I can't tell you, I just got my new studio, Turtle Studio, that I'm doing work in. And the first thing I looked for today was my studio rules to put them up on the wall. And it's okay if people don't get the work. Just, thank you for taking the time to look at it. And that's what I do. Yeah. Should I read the question?
No. Well, yes, if you prefer, yeah, we can also do it that way, or we just continue going through the list.
Okay.
We would have Catherine Harris here. We'll invite her if she wants to
Okay.
ask you the question herself. She should be here. Sorry, there you go.
Hi.
Hello.
Sorry, joining you from home, trying to find a better lighting situation, so it's not quite so.
It's all good.
Here we go. Sorry about that. I really enjoyed your presentation of your work, and especially just fascinated by the way that you sort of referred to the idea that you wanted to hold on to collage because that was your job, and the idea that collage itself as a medium was uniquely expressive of the complexity of identity. And I just wondered if did you come originally to collage? Was that the you know, the first impetus, or have there been many other media but that you've sort of
many other media? I always tell people I used to do work like Norman Rockwell. I was a Black Norman Rockwell. I would do Black Americana, and so I had little kids running in fields or in the church going to sleep on grandma and things like that. And I remember, and I tell people all the time, it was Ron Artest was playing, and someone threw some water on him, and he jumped into the audience, and he was like fighting a fan. And the whole idea of CNN played that over and over that whole weekend. And there's this big, giant Black guy jumping in, and this small little boy, and he was beating him up. And I was like, okay, so I'm doing this, but this image is what's being, projected. And so I realized that while what I was doing was important, it wasn't what people were actually seeing. So I just took off. I told someone I took 2006 the summer off, and I decided I was going to give it 3 months to allow the work to do what it needed to do. And eventually in 2011, we made it to Collage. And that was the floodgates. And along with that, literature. Literature was the missing piece the whole time. And once I was able to add literature to my practice, and it merged in a way that I was able to tell this story. And it's just, God smiled on me. He said, that's it. Look how long it took you to do it. Slow learner. So it was great. And so when I get in, one of my friends, I said, I got to get a great bookshelf for my studio. And she said, why? It's a studio. You don't need books. And I was like, I need books. Books is just as important as the glue, the scissors, the idea, the printing. It's what feeds this work. It gives the work its complexity. I can't do it. It's the literature that I read that does it. So,
That's totally beautiful and inspiring. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Anytime. Where are you, in a boathouse? Where are you? I mean, it looks cool. I'm a person who goes off subject. Okay, so.
Well, so a local architect made this house, and it's a little bit of a work in progress, but it's pretty fun to live in.
Okay, fantastic. I love it. Be well and stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
So we'll keep going down the line. Sham Oaks, are you there? Are you able to hear us?
I am able to hear you. I don't think I have the question anymore.
Oh, sure.
I had to rejoin, so if someone else could read that, thank you.
Sure. Something I struggle greatly with is determining my place in terms of, quote, preparedness. I often feel I'm not able to reach out to galleries/museums to show my work. Would you recommend pushing forward with exposure, or waiting until I, quote, feel ready / am more mature / mentally equipped for success in particular, if it may follow?
Right. Well, I don't know anybody's ready for success, but one of the things I will tell you is to keep going with your practice. I think we are our own worst critic when we say, is the work ready? How do we know it's ready? We can only know by putting it out there for others to view. How do you know? One of the things, I always remember this quote by Oprah. She said, everybody wants to be success, but when success happens, they're not prepared for it. One of the things that happened to me in 2017 is that when success knocked at my door, I was ready for it. I had work in my studio, I had work in the gallery, I had work at home, I had work, and I was able to pull it out. And not like, again, not all of it's going to be great. I don't know any artist out there trying to hit home runs every time. But one of the things you have to do is that you have to make inroads. You have to, I wouldn't reach out to museums right now. I would reach out. And I know that Jerry Sauce says not to do this, but this has helped me. I think you need to find people who do work similar to you and ask artists, especially artists, for 15 minutes of their time to just look at your work, just give you some feedback, and just have a one-on-one. I did this with Alexandra Grant in LA, and she said, sure, I'll look at it. I was shocked. And she did, because she does these beautiful text works along with her amazing art pieces. And I was new to text. And she looked at my work. She gave me really good advice. It ended up, because it was artist to artist, it wasn't me begging, help me, can you show me, can you introduce me to your gallery, blah, blah. It was none of that. It was just artist to artist talking about technique, style, how to push the work. I think that's really important. And if you're insecure about the work, it's fine. I'm insecure. I've had a big show open. I had a letdown on Monday. I was like, why am I having a letdown? I got, all these big reviews and they were great. And so I think it's just important as an artist to kind of, step out there a little bit. And even if you're unsure, because no one's going to see it at your house, they're just not.
Well, thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Hey, cutie, I see you now. What type of work do you do?
Well, I'm young yet, so
yes, I see you young.
I'm into illustration right now. Some collage, sort of with leaves and nature and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. I really enjoyed your work. It was fantastic. So
thank you. One thing I would tell you is that, if you're doing illustration and collage, do the mixed media thing, because that way you just open up a wealth of stuff. And then also when you're ready, started adding other elements to it. Like I just started adding buttons and stuff like that. So think about different things. What is your work about? Can you tell me? Let me tell you this. How old are you? How old are you? You can tell.
I'm only 19 right now.
Okay. All right. This is your elevator. Okay.
Finding that.
Okay. This is cool, but listen, this is your elevator ride. This is your elevator speak. So let's say, who's the person you really love, like an artist, or it could be anybody that you just like, I love them to death.
My dad.
I mean,
that's not the answer you wanted. I know.
But do you have do you like sports, or do you like what do you like? Okay, let's say
it's so tough. I love animation.
What?
I love animation.
Okay, who's one of the famous animated artists out there right now?
Oh boy.
Anybody.
Oh.
Okay, let's think about this. So what if you push the button and you get on the elevator, and it's one of the top animated persons on the elevator, and you get on with them and you're going up to the top floor. This is the time for you to do your elevator talk and say, you know what, I think you're great. This is what my work is about. And so when you can do that you go up 10 flights, when you can talk about your work like that, that's when you got half the stuff done, man. And so just think about that. That's your elevator speech. That's when you get on. I mean, I got on the elevator with, oh my God, I'm not going to talk about it. But anyway, it's horrible. And I saw sweating and, so don't do that. But
I'm sweating right now.
just think about people like that, and just think about your work like that. Just say, I have not 6 minutes, maybe 5 minutes to go up, and I want to talk about my work in that way. And your work is going to change. You're really young, by the time you're my age, you're gonna have so many. You're not gonna even remember the work you did before. It's gonna be amazing. So if you see me old and rolling my wheelchair through MoMA, just push me on, send me on home, push me out the doors, and just be
I'd
nice.
be honored.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, be well. Bye.
And how are you feeling, Deborah?
I
Kirsten?
feel good. I mean, I don't know what time we have. I mean, I told you I'm a Southerner. I talk a lot.
Well, we have a couple more questions if you're open to doing so.
Okay, we're gonna do 2 more questions. That'd be great.
Okay, we have one person whose name is in characters. Are you able to hear us? Okay, unmuting. Not sure if this is Chinese or Japanese. I'm trying to.
That's the question I did. Kabina Mercer. The Kabina Mercer question. Oh, there you go.
That's Ruichi. He's a PhD student here at UNM. Hi, Ruichi.
Okay.
Hi, Deborah. Thank you for sharing your beautiful and powerful pieces.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed. So I think like my question is partially answered, like when Chloe asked about the like fluctuation. I think like my question is like like your thoughts like on the like like fluctuation of like black body. Like when I saw your work, the like first idea that came to my mind is like illegibility. So like because faces are composed of like 3 or like 4 different parts, so we can't like identify like any like specific emotion or like specific thoughts or like specific identity to it. And then and like when like I get the idea of the illegibility, like I kind of feel like the like tension like between figures in the image and like me, because and like I like was not sure like if that's a like refusal or like rejection like to be read and understood, or like is it just the like a starting point for like dialogue or conversation.
I think it's a great starting point when you tend to take 2 dynamic parts and try to merge them into one. And that's something that I did in this work I called we heard the thunder, and which I really fractured the body, and it was so distorted, and it was it was recognizable as a person, but it was so twisted, and you can almost feel the pain because no one body moves and shapes like that. And you know I know that book is somewhere, but I don't want to grab it and miss out on time. But if you put your email or something in one of these chats, I'll send it to you and explain a little bit more about what you just asked, and break it down some, because I think I'm not all the way answering your question, but I think I am. And I think when you see this image, and we can go back and forth through an email chain, that you're going to understand what I'm talking about and more understand what you're talking about. Because I think, well, if this is your question, when you said, thank you for sharing your beautiful, powerful pieces, can you tell your thoughts on fractionalization of the body? Is that what that was your question?
Yeah, that was the like original question, but like I just trying to like refine it. Like
okay, no, that's good. Actually, that's good. And I think that when I show you this work, you're gonna understand what I'm talking about, and we can go back and forth, because I think fracturing is showing not only pain, but it also show reimagining who you are and who the way people see you. Sometimes you have to change and morph into something. Let's say when your experience, all your experiences that you've had in the last year, and you take those back to your house where your mom is or your dad is, and they say, well, you've changed. Well, you're no longer the same person. Now you have new experience, new things. Your life has shifted. Who you are has shifted into something else. And what I think what's happening today is that blackness and brownness and everything, we're fracturing into something else. It's a growth, it's painful, but it's one that we have to do. And I think that and this work in particular, it's 5 works in that series. I would love to share them with you. And you can see I started them in 2018, and you can see pretty much it answers your question, is that the body has been twisted and turned into so many different ways. It's not recognizable, but how can we do that? How can we change that? And I love William H. Johnson because his work is similar to that, where the parts are they're just structures, you know. And then you look at Benny Andrews and how he approached collage and the body and texture and assemblage, you know, how he adds stuff to it. So yeah, I don't know where I can put my since Kirsten know who you are, she can share my email with you, and we can have a dialogue back and forth, and I can share some of this work with you, so you can see what I'm talking about. Is that cool?
Yep. Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, no problem. All righty.
And I think you said one more question, and I wasn't sure which question we should go with. Do you?
Yeah, Thomas Murray. If it's Tom, he was an MFA student here a while ago, and he asked a question about basically why you limit boys and girls in the same images, per boy and girl in the same work. Is there a tension similar to Black and white sexuality figures in the same work? Ownership, dominance?
No,
Yeah.
these are little kids, so I it's really hard when I put Black boys and girls together. It's not a sexual tension type deal. It's this idea of more shared history and shared future, and it's not one that has dominance over the other in a sense, because I don't know what it's like to be a male. And so what I try to do is come up with things I think that they're experiencing. And because I've chose to couch my argument using children who are 8 to 12, 8 to 10, I'm limited in what I can do, you know, when it comes to like violence and sexuality and things like that. I think that is further work down the line. And I could see me doing something. I do believe that the children have to grow older in my practice, and so maybe those types of tension can come through. Um, but yeah, figures in the same work, ownership, dominance. Not so much. I don't have enough of it to kind of answer that question. That is something that I can explore, though. I'm open to exploring. Hmm. Yeah, Thomas got the big question tonight. All right.
Thank you so much. I really
Oh,
enjoyed
there
it.
you go. There you go. All right. Don't be asking no big head questions. I don't want to have to think too hard. But yeah,
Beautiful work. Beautiful work.
thank you so much. Yeah, I'm thinking about those issues, but I have to grow my kids up a little bit more in order for us to have that dialogue, because they're just so young right now. And the things I'm talking about, especially when I speak to women, and you know, with the gloves, it's like, when do these gloves come on? You know, do they come on as early as 8 or 14 or 16? By the time you're 25, you know, you're ready to fight who you are as a woman, your own identity, and how you want people to see you, and the history of that vision. So I haven't really explored, you know, the dominance between the male and the female figure sharing a space, sharing that white space. That's interesting. You
I'm
know?
probably overreading because I've been reading too much Kirsten.
Ah.
So.
Well, I think that's good. I always want to push my work, you know. I didn't put my pen and paper down here, but I'm definitely going to write that stuff down because, you know, the work is moving forward.
But there was a male hand on a girl face,
Yeah.
the white sleeve, and
Mm.
it felt violent. And I don't know, yeah, it's probably me reading into it, you know.
No, most of the time when I have the face, the hands over them is mostly care. Sometimes it's care, sometimes it's not care. Because I have done it sometimes is oh, you're right, it's ownership that, you know, but not so much in the violent term of the history of Black body and the dominance of whiteness over that. So you do see that in the work. But if it's a Black hand on top of the Black child's face or arm or something like that, it's more care. I wanted to read as care. I don't know if it's reading that way, but that's what I wanted to read as. You know, so.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Righty.
All right, I guess we have to wind down, although there's still quite a few questions, but thank you so much, Deborah and Kirsten. This has just been a pure joy, absolute highlight, and really appreciate your time and sharing your work with us. Also, I want to thank everyone else who joined us tonight. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did. And be sure to check out Deborah Roberts' solo exhibition at the Contemporary Austin. I think it's up until August 15th.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.